Vikings never wore horned helmets. Let's get this one out of the way first. If asked to picture a Viking, chances are you'd picture a big hairy bloke with a horned helmet. But actually, Viking helmets really didn't have horns. Horns would have been impractical in battle, although there is evidence of other civilizations having horned helmets. Horned helmets only became associated with them during the 19th century when a lot of operas were written about them. Vikings loved looking handsome. When you think about Vikings, you might imagine big, strong men who go to war and look tough with battle scars. Funny enough, Viking men actually cared a lot about how they looked. Many of them would dye their hair and beards blonde as it was viewed as the best color. Not only that, but Vikings had combs, tweezers, and ear spoons to clean out their ears. They even bathed 4 times as much as most other people from their time. So it is true that Vikings loved grooming. The majority of Viking men were farmers. I know, disappointing as it may be to the fans of the Vikings, most Viking men never, or rarely, picked up a sword. Most were peaceful farmers, growing barley, rye and oats and keeping cattle, goats, pigs and sheep. 90% of Viking men were farmers who lived on their land in small villages, and when they did sail out it was mostly for exploration and trade, not to raid and slaughter people. There was no one community. The fact that Viking groups didn't recognize other groups is one of the most curious facts about the Viking. There was no collective feeling. There were numerous tribes led by chiefs in the region that is now known as Scandinavia. Despite the fact that trade was common, these tribes frequently fought against one another rather than working together. Vikings loved cats. Viking communities valued cats highly and domesticated them to live on farms. They were considered essential household members and were used to repel pests. On long journeys to neighboring nations, Vikings even brought their cats with them. Cats were associated with Freyja, the goddess of love. Vikings were addicted to magic mushrooms. Between the end of the 8th century and the middle of the 11th century, the Vikings dominated European warfare. The Vikings' ability to enter a trance-like state known as berserker before a battle was one huge advantage over the people they invaded. Anyone who stood in their way would be slaughtered indiscriminately in this state. The Vikings may have entered these berserker states through consumption of psilocybin mushrooms, often referred to as magic mushrooms. Vikings loved games. The Vikings loved violence, so it shouldn't be a surprise that their games make UFC look like the ballet. In Viking games, death and serious injuries were common. The rule was that men could stop playing whenever they wanted. If they got killed, it was their own fault. One game they played was a swimming competition, and we use that term very loosely. The point of the game was for the men to hold an opponent underwater for as long as he could. If the man couldn't reach the surface, he drowned. Alcohol was treated as a sacred beverage. Literature and archaeology agree that Vikings had a drinking culture. Drinking was part of every celebration and gathering. During big events, warriors would be served by the lady of the house, then hail the gods and their ancestors and make sacred oaths. It was believed that by doing this, men would be able to weave their fates and address the gods. Vikings beat Christopher Columbus to America. Despite the fact that Christopher Columbus is credited with discovering the America, Leif Erikson, a Viking explorer, arrived at North America approximately 500 years before Columbus did and named it Vinland. Exploration was a family legacy for the Erikson family. Eric the Red, Leif Erikson's father, founded the first European settlement in Greenland after being exiled from Iceland for murder.